Television. The House of Rest.
The following program has been rated PG. Parental guidance is advised.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Divulge Show. My name is Kesh Susan, and this is, the Divulge here at O.C.D Television. Of course, bringing to you awesome conversation, a valid conversation, and very educative, inspiring conversation. And as I say, you cannot watch the Divulge without a good notebook and a good biro pen. And today we are talking about a very awesome conversation, and we're talking about understanding anxiety disorders and O.C.D. Does that sound familiar? It is some jargons. We'll get to know with time, and of course by the end of this conversation, your notebook and your biro pen will really give you a proper service. And together with me, I'm joined with a very interesting person, a therapist, a beautiful person in and out, from the soul, the spirit, the body, generally a very educative person, and one that is aware of her professionalism, and very important even in this field. Ladies and gentlemen, from the comfort of where you are, help me introduce Beulah Njagi. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yes.
Kindly look at this camera and introduce yourself.
Wow, thank you so much, Kesh. That was a very healthy introduction. My name is Beulah Njagi. I am a therapist by profession, or a psychologist or counselor, whichever you prefer to use. So I practice, I like sitting with people, talking with people, understanding where they're at, seeing how to help them get to where they want to be. Currently pursuing my master's in marriage and family therapy, because that's where my passion is at. And really excited to be here to get feedback from you guys so that we learn together.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Even before we get to our topic, I would love to know, kulikuwa na other career paths ungefuata? Wewe kwanza unakaa polisi mnoma sana.
Ningekuwa nahurumia kila mtu.
Una makosa, in fact unakaa polisi. Okay, maybe from my eyes, maybe viewer home anasema Kesha pona umechoma ni, it's not really true. But kwa nini kulikuwa na hii passion ya counseling, psychology and therapy? Kwa nini ulitake your route?
So I find that I don't really have an answer for that question, but I do. So initially my line was medicine, preferably neurosurgeon, but just in the medical field. And then somewhere in Form 2 I started seeing blood, and I'm just like, no thank you, I'm good. So when that happened, the only other thing that was present in my mind was psychology. I didn't know why, but I feel like now that I do it, it's still in the healing field, and I feel like that's actually what I'm called to do, to heal. So now it's just that we don't use dawas and surgical knives and all those medical jargons. It's just we sit and we heal the soul.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how has it been so far?
Oh, it's a lot of things. It's a beautiful journey for sure. It's interesting. Sometimes it's a lot because you're picking up, a lot of burdens, and sometimes it's just like, what do I do with this?
Yes.
Yeah. So in a way, it's a lot, but it sharpens you, and it's always such a privilege to see someone's life change just because they get to talk to you every week or every other week. It's a deeply humbling experience. Yeah.
Amazing. Get to talk to us on all our social media platforms, that is O.C.D Television, across, and the Divulge. This is where we speak about matters family, matters politics, matters spiritual, generally. And I believe that it will be a blessing to you and someone that you'll be able to share the the conversation too, and it will be of so much help. Back to you, Bila. Today we are talking about matters anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
And of course, OCD, and of course, we are going to get to understand the meaning of that in a short while. And probably I can ask, what does it mean when you talk about anxiety disorder?
Anxiety. So I feel like it's an important disclaimer for me to just say I'm anxious. So to grant me the grace, and then we move on.
Okay.
But anxiety is actually quite a normal feeling. I'd say it's such a deeply human emotion.
Yes.
So anxiety is a fear of anticipated threat. Could be real, could be perceived, but it's in the future.
Yes.
And then fear is like the emotional response to what is happening now. Could be real or could be perceived. Like if you think guys are coming after you, that response would be fear.
Okay.
If you're thinking about how you're living here right now and then you don't know who's on the road, now that's anxiety because it's in the future, it's not happening now. Yeah.
So let me get the difference again. Fear is present, anxiety is future.
Future, yes.
Right. Maybe you can help me. Unajua sasa sisi ni wale wenye kidogo tunasoma pole pole.
All right, isn't it so?
Kindly explain that.
Okay. So fear,
Yes.
let me read it as per the DSM. DSM is the book we psychologists use. Big, fat, scary book, but no one else needs to know about it.
Okay.
It just helps us, differentiate what this is and if
Yes.
it's a disorder or not. So it describes fear as an emotional response to real or perceived imminent threat.
Okay.
Like iko hapa. Like if there was to be a snake, a lion, a iko hapa, how we would react. The
Yes.
freeze, fight or flight response. Either una freeze ama unaanza kufikiria venye ni mimi na hii lion ama where are the windows, where are the doors.
Yes.
That's what happens now. That's what we call it fear when it's happening in the now to a threat that you can see and you're experiencing now.
Okay. Okay.
So now anxiety is you're getting this same response, the fight, flight or freeze response to something that's in the future, like Hydra happened.
Yes.
So your body reacts as if that lion is in the room, but you're thinking about an exam that's tomorrow. It's not happened, but the way your body reacts is as if that fear is real and it's present now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are some of the causes of anxiety disorders?
Well, okay, so maybe we can talk about what makes it a disorder, because again, it's a very natural thing. When
Please do.
when you're surprised with something, it's natural to feel that nervousness.
Yes.
So it becomes a disorder when it interferes with your daily living, when it's distressful. What we call this, like it gives you more distress to a point where you cannot function. So like the things that you are supposed to be doing,
Yes.
become affected. And so with severity, we tell with the number of domains in your life that are affected. So say for someone who's a student, so if your functioning in school is affected and home and any other place iko sawa,
Yes.
then it's a bit not so severe, it's a bit mild. But the more of like the areas in your life are affected by this anxiety,
Yes.
then the more severe it is, and that's when we call it a disorder, when it is too distressing and it's affecting your functioning in whatever capacity.
Okay.
Yes. So the question was the cause.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So we have, there's always a debate. If you sit with psychologists, you'll have to hear nature somewhere. So nature refers to the environment. No, nature refers to your genetics, and nature refers to the environment, yeah?
Yes.
The things that are happening as you're growing up. So for some of these things, it's a cross between the two.
Yeah.
So you'd find that there's a genetic component in that if you look in your family history and there's like a history of, mental disorders of whichever kind, or you find that people are of a certain kind of personality, you might be more predisposed to experiencing anxiety disorders than someone else.
Okay.
And then we go into the environmental factors, whereby if you've had a traumatic experience in your childhood or even in adulthood, it kind of shifts something about you, something about how you function, the kind of walls that you would put up in terms of now how to protect yourself in future. And then we see that come alive as we talk about the different types of anxiety disorders that are there. Yeah, so you can be able to pick, oh wait, this one came from this specific experience, and this one is just probably a genetic component, either based on temperament or you know, sometimes the fact that your mom was anxious when she was pregnant with you, or you know, she also got it from her mother, and then it just becomes a whole thing. Or some temperaments that are more predisposed to it, like the melancholics, would be more susceptible to anxiety than other personalities, other temperaments.
I think you've mentioned something some minutes, some seconds before, and actually that was supposed to be my second question, and I believe you can give us more clarity on that.
Right.
Because we all get anxious, we all fear something. True. You know. Hata saizi mimi mali vile nimekaa hapa, there is something that probably I'm like, ita happen aje, you know. So how do I differentiate the normal way of feeling anxious and probably you're afraid of something from now it becoming a disorder, because we are discussing anxiety disorder.
Disorders.
Yes.
That's a really good question. So we look at how distressing it is, right? So you notice that for normal anxieties, there's a self-soothing technique that you can apply, and you're fine. Or there are things you can tell yourself, like, okay, you're anxious, but you're prepared. So this is just a normal jitters. Wenda tu uanze utakuwa sawa, and for sure utakuwa sawa. But then now there's to a point where you're not able to, you know, come out of bed for some people. You're not able to show up for those things that need you to show up for them. You're not able to, you know, give that presentation or do whatever it is that is, you know, requiring of you, that's required of you, that is also the trigger for that anxiety. So the moment it becomes too distressing for you to handle, the moment it interferes with your functioning, then that's when we call it a disorder. That's when we need to look at it as just separate from normal anxiety.
Amazing. So what are some of the types? Are they classes?
We could
types
of
the classes of anxiety disorder, or the types of anxiety disorder. Probably we can look at that also.
Yes. Okay, so there are many as per the classifications in the DSM-5. We have 11 categories of that.
Oh, really?
Right, yeah. They're quite,
Okay.
And so the way they have arranged them is, you know, developmentally, but then somewhere you get to see that actually all of this, again, I probably should have mentioned this when we're talking about classifying normal and abnormal. Anxiety is at a point where it is beyond your developmental milestones. For example, at this point in life, what are we not allowed to fear? There's just a way, I don't know. If this was a class and you were to be picked upon, I don't think your reaction, your guy nimechaguliwa, is supposed to be as intense as, you know, some bad example. Let's look into the classes and then we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. So one, we have separation anxiety.
Separation anxiety.
Yes, which talks of that the feeling of anxiety that's related to being separated from attachment figures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyone that is an attachment figure.
Or anything.
Or
can it be an item?
It could actually be an item.
Like a phone.
Like a phone. You're shouting at a lot of people right now. Like a phone.
Okay.
Yeah, and so when we now look at the developmental aspect, it makes sense for a child to cry when mommy leaves them on the first day of school to unit, you know. But like now for someone at past that age, where you're having this really loud fear of losing them or being separated from them, and sometimes you notice that you even begin to cook up scenarios. What if they get sick? What if they die? What if I'm kidnapped? What if, you know? And then it becomes distressing to you to a point where you can't function. And so when we talk about gadgets, then there's also that, you know, simu ikienda, my life is over. Or sometimes we even have for children we call them the safety blankets, but as adults we get to develop our own safety blankets that once they're taken away, we're not okay. And so there's always this fear for what if it goes. Then that's what we call the separation anxiety.
Before tuendelee,
Okay.
ninaona hapa kwa studio kuna mtu anataka niulize swali. Hapo kwa separation hapo ndo heartbreak iko. Lazima tujue heartbreak na anxiety lazima ikue cause zingiane tu mahali. Okay, maybe you can answer that.
Okay, hatutamtaja kwa majina but ndugu. Anyway, so for that, you remember what we defined anxiety as? It's a fear of anticipated threat. Haijakam bado.
Okay.
Unacheki heartbreak isha happen. Like isha happen. Okay. So now what we're dealing with is perhaps loss and grief. Yeah. But now the fear for what if it happens, what if they die, what if they leave me, what if they and living in just that what if they mpaka it takes away from even being present in the this thing that we are. Yeah, so now that's when it is anxiety. Yeah, but once that has happened, then yeah, it's okay. We'll talk about loss. We'll cry, yeah.
Please continue.
Okay, so we also have selective mutism, where I mean, it's in the term, you're not able to, or the individual does not communicate verbally in certain situations. So it could be for children, say, nyumbani anaongea akifika shule, doesn't want to talk, will not answer questions, will not speak to other kids, will use, sign language to speak their needs. And it's not that they can't developmentally speak, they're not mute, they just can't talk in that situation.
Can't talk or don't want to talk.
Don't want to talk. To them, it feels like they can't talk.
Okay.
To others, it just looks like they're refusing to talk. And then this is also present in adults, actually, but more so when there's other psychiatric conditions going on. Yeah, so we get to see that they'll speak in certain situations, in others won't talk. Yeah, and so the feeling could be I don't know, every time I think about it, I imagine this kind of fear that is so paralyzing that words won't form in your mouth, or even if they do, they won't come out because of anxiety.
Hapo ndo blue ticking.
Blue ticking.
Hapo ndo iko ama that's something
nakwambia
different.
Niyo na kucheza because now that one is not even unless
blue ticking useme mtu akona anxiety disorder.
No.
Okay.
Because now we're talking about verbal communication.
Verbal.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yeah. So they can type what's happening,
Yes.
Kiblutikiwa hiyo pia kuja tuongee loss, kuja tuongee rejection,
Ukikata ukiachwa achika, tuendelee.
Yeah. And then we have also specific phobias. So this is all the things. Oh, I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid of snakes.
It's called?
I'm afraid specific phobias.
Specific phobias.
Yes.
Okay.
So now they're in classes, like now for heights, we'd classify them into environmental or nature. So fear of floods or of rain or of heights, things to do with the environment.
Yes.
Then there's animals, spiders, snakes, all those things go there.
Yes.
Then there's those guys who are afraid of blood and medical procedures. It's also a whole thing.
Sindano.
So just
Iko hapo.
okay.
Unaka
culprit, but
no. Me, but I prefer nini than dawas.
Oh, interesting.
Mimi ambia unataka kudunga wapi?
Hey, you're la special. Yes. But yeah, all those two phobias come under that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a disorder, but that
is
will make room. Yeah. Then we have social anxiety disorder. And so this is a fear of, it appears in social situations where there's this fear of what will they think of me, what will happen, what if I embarrass myself.
Okay.
So this one really, I think this one affects so many people. It's just that it's never talked about, and maybe it's talked about, you're told, I get over it. So you just go present. Si umesoma? So unajua content. Si ndo useme, But there's actually this legit fear of what if I mess up, or what will they think? So that all comes under social anxiety disorder. Or now, even for people that we call shy, why you've been so shy and usalime wageni?
Yes.
Anxious,
okay.
And it's legit.
Yes.
Yeah. Then we have panic disorder. So I feel like when we talk about anxiety disorders, what people automatically shift to is the panic disorder, where you're just imagining a panic attack. So what's important to know is that panic attacks, yeah, they do come under the panic disorder, but they also happen for they could happen as an anxiety disorder or as something completely different. And so this is now what we see as the visible presentation of anxiety, where there is, that rapid heartbeat, the sweaty palms, I'm a culprit of that one, the shortness of breath, or you're feeling like you can't breathe, or there's chest pain. Then until now we get the whole showdown of, someone is not actually breathing, or you feel like there's numbness on your skin, or your skin is tingling, ama you feel like now you're watching yourself in that situation. It's like we call it depersonalization or derealization, like you've removed yourself from that reality because it's too much to handle. Yeah, so that all comes under the panic disorder.
Okay.
Then we have agoraphobia. Agoraphobia refers to the fear of being in enclosed spaces or spaces with crowds. So it's just this kwenda soko, being in a lift or being in front of people. So it's a little bit like the social anxiety in that the fears of, sometimes the fear of I'll embarrass myself is similar between the two. But then we also get the, what if I get the symptoms of the panic disorder? Okay. What if I panic? What if this happens? What if this happens? I can't be around anywhere that is enclosed and there are too many people.
Like for me, I don't like more so the soko, the market.
The market.
Yeah, the market feel. Go katikati ya watu.
What does it feel for you? Acha nikuweke kwa mata kidogo.
Sasa nani anafanya interview?
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry.
I think, what was the question?
What does it feel like for you, that situation kwa soko?
I think uneasy. I want my space. I feel in kama wanani, like it's like we are now sharing oxygen. It's suffocating, yeah. So like it's not really clean.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's noisy, so I will feel that. Yeah. For me, I prefer my noise. Well, let's continue.
Okay, interesting. I personally, me and elevators, we are trying
it's a no.
lifts, but up to a certain number of people and then certain kinds of lifts because of just fear.
Yeah, probably our viewers can share their experience on our Facebook page and our other platforms.
Yeah, I'd really like to hear those.
Yes.
Then we have another really common form of anxiety. It's called now generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay.
So this one again cuts across so many people, and this one is just woga tu. Yani everything has a what if to it,
Yes.
If it's work, if it's school, if it's home, if it's kwenda kwa duka, there's just that ka what if. And you find, I don't know if you've been seeing those memes for introverts trying to make an order for food. So you practice before what you're going to say, and then in that moment, una panic. You say the wrong, you call yourself a sandwich basically, instead of ordering for the sandwich,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so things like that, those two, wogas za kila kitu, everything has a, guy, what if this happens, guy? So it's like it's always present.
Yes.
And so with this one, some of the symptoms you see is if you're not able, because sometimes you can be in it in so long, you don't realize that your thoughts are always anxious thoughts, but you notice that you're tired all the time, you're just tired. You probably tend to withdraw from things. Situations just drain you. Smallest things drain you. So those can be telltale signs that maybe it's something to look at as to whether you might be living with generalized anxiety disorder, GAD for short.
Yeah.
And then now, so those are like the 7 main. So the other 4 are just like small breakdowns. Yeah. So we have this anxiety that's induced by substances or medication, like actual dawa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could get the feelings of anxiety with the physical expression, the ones from the panic disorder.
Yeah.
after taking some certain medications for certain conditions, or now we could look at substances. For example, when you're intoxicated with certain substances, you could experience anxiety, or when you're having withdrawal symptoms from those substances, especially now things like alcohol, where your thought patterns go haywire, you're trembling, your heart is beating really fast. You're basically living in a panic attack without any threat. It's just the substance is either there or not there.
Yeah.
Then we have anxiety disorder due to another medical condition. So yeah, that's the trigger. The other medical condition is what is causing the symptoms.
Okay.
And then we have now the other specified or unspecified, which is just anxiety disorder that does not fully meet the criteria to be any of these others, but it's still causing distress and it's still impairing function to some extent. So we'd code it as either specified or unspecified. Yeah.
Before we get to how you can diagnose, maybe in a classroom scenario, or because I think most of us or all of us, we have gone through a classroom, at some point.
Yeah.
Probably as the administrator, the facilitator, the teacher, how can you pick a learner who is struggling or who has the anxiety disorder?
Good question. I hope they're listening. So you'd find, they would avoid answering questions in the classroom setting, or you'd notice that they're not really talking as much with other children, or you can tell from like the work they do as you're marking that the work that this kid is really smart, they know their stuff, but unampatia presentation unashanga jamani, what has happened. So those are some of the things that could let you know perhaps they need a little bit more attention. Sometimes when you call on them, you'd notice they go blank, kila kitu imeenda.
And it's not like they don't know.
It's not that they don't
know the answer.
In fact, if you tell them to write it down after, they'll be good. They'll give you everything, you know. But just in that moment, you notice they go blank, or sometimes you would notice them having an actual panic attack in terms of now their breathing goes really fast and really shallow, or they would be unable to talk. You'd notice the sweating. I wish my teachers noticed my sweating. It was a lot. Or you just notice, but mostly the avoidance for the children. Mostly the avoidance. Yeah, to participate, to raise their hands. They wouldn't. You'd have to call on them. And even when you do, you'd have to prompt them. But then you get to know that they actually know their content. So that disparity between how come nikikuita hawezi sema, but tukiwa just us you can say, or if it's an exam, a written exam, you can really articulate yourself well. Then it becomes a sign that something could be happening there.
Their lives.
Yeah.
Amazing. So generally, now apart from the classroom, how do we diagnose? Do you have a medical way, a scientific way, or it's purely therapeutic? Just sasa from this end, ukisikia therapy, sitaki kusema hiyo jina. You keep on saying, Kesh, don't mention that. So according to you, what do you think? What are some of the ways to diagnose anxiety disorders?
Okay, good question. So we do have some diagnostic tools.
Okay. Tools
ni questionnaire.
Oh.
Sipati anxiety.
Hey.
Relax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unajua umesema tools. Mimi tools ni
vyombo vya
scissors, power. So unajua please.
So in our field, tools ni pen and paper, with now tools. Background sasa ni ma research
Tools hata sasa ni mimi ndo nimeanza kukua na zinaitwa umesema sweaty hands.
Right. Yeah,
okay,
so we do have some tests that we do just to, check on how that's happening. And so psychiatrists are able to do that. We as psychologists were able to do that.
Okay.
But sometimes there are things you can check within yourself. So if you'd allow me, I'm just going to read a list of, the symptoms of the panic disorder, which are like the physical manifestations of anxiety.
Okay.
So if you see that you get a lot of this, it might be nice to talk to someone. I'm not saying there's anything going on. I'm just saying it
You're
might
not
be
shouting.
nice.
You're not
No,
shouting.
no. It might be nice to talk to a professional. Yeah.
Okay.
So we
Wacha tuone kama tutatika few.
Right.
Okay, let's
so
go.
we have the palpitations or the pounding heart rate in a press accelerator kidogo. We have sweating. We have trembling or shaking. So for some, you could tell in the voice. That's another to the question on children.
Okay.
Sometimes they do get to talk, but you can notice their voice is shaking,
Yeah.
or they themselves are really shaking. Then it's a sign that they're struggling with anxiety.
Maybe before you continue, in school we used to see them. Tumepatikana noisemakers in class.
Right.
And then the principal is saying, Form 4Y,
Yeah.
ninyi wote tokeni. And then kuna wale kama Kesh. Cha, unapigo zako.
Yeah.
Unageuka unaangalia, unapigo zako. Because like, cha wazi jo, unaingia class. Mwingine to the imagination of the cane.
Correct.
Everything, sweat.
Yeah.
Crying.
Yeah.
Or like, by the way, I thought this is normal. Okay, let's continue.
Yeah, so that's sign of panic disorder. Could be a sign of generalized anxiety. Yeah, because even for them probably it's so much more than just nachapwa. Like akipigia mzazi wangu and then you know, and then
okay.
it goes, it just keeps building. You know, anxiety tends to feed on itself. So you give it one thought and then it feeds and feeds and feeds and just adds more negative things until it's just like, okay, there's high. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And which is why actually some of these things, because these symptoms are what ideally your body does when you're dealing with what we talked about, the bear or the lion. Like your heart should beat faster so that you get more oxygen,
Yes.
so that you're able to either run away or fight the thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So moving
Continue.
on.
Yeah.
Right. So we've talked about trembling or shaking. We have the shortness of breath, or you feel like you can't really breathe vizuri, or your
Yes.
breaths are shaky and shallow. We have feelings of choking. We have chest pain or discomfort in the chest. We have nausea or abdominal distress. So for some, the anxiety is present in the gut. So you either feel like vomiting or you just feel like things are not okay in the stomach. You're queasy or, yeah.
Okay.
We have feeling dizzy, or you're feeling unsteady or lightheaded, or that you can faint, and some people actually do faint. Again, oxygen.
Yeah.
Then we have chills or heat. So some get really hot, some get really cold, some get both interchangeably. And then we have numbness or tingling sensations. It's like your nerves, and I don't know if it becomes too sensitive mpaka now they're not feeling anything, or yeah, but that happens. You get numb. And then now what we talked about, removing yourself from reality. So that's what we call the derealization or the depersonalization.
Yes.
Detaching yourself from either yourself or from the reality.
And what do you mean by that? Just sasa, we that watch a lot of movies, unaanza kutustua, because we know people who come out of the body
Oh, right.
to do funny things at night.
That's not where we are. It's just,
Bring us home.
have you ever had that feeling for, it's like you're watching yourself go through the day? Like at the end of the day, it's just like, kai ni mimi nilifanya hivyo. Like the feeling of it, it's like you're doing it and you know you're doing it, but you don't feel like you're present in it. It's like you're watching yourself.
Actually,
do
you're
it.
shocked that you are the one who did it.
Yeah, yeah. Or sometimes you find that unatembea ama you're heading somewhere, but if someone asked you how you got there, you can't.
Okay.
It's like you are on autopilot. Hauko, but uko, but hauko. If you're asked the details of it, man, you can't give them.
Yes.
So in that case, you've removed yourself from the reality. In the other case where you're watching yourself, it's like you're removing yourself from yourself.
Yeah.
Now you're just like, oh, Kesha nadu. Oh, hiya, Kesha naeza do hivi. Hey, Kesh ni interesting. But you're the Kesh, you just don't feel like you're the Kesh in that moment.
Yeah. Now probably, maybe I can ask this for a lot of us. The case where you hold the keys, and then unatafuta keys the whole house. I'm like, who took my keys? Who did this? And then, niko nazo. Lakini, it's not like you are not seeing your hand. You know very well, this is my hand keys. But for some reason, you cannot see the keys.
Yeah.
How can, is it part of that, or it's something different?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever thought about it like that. But when I think about it now, it does sound like it's a bit of that. But then it's common in the sense that tumezoea kurun on autopilot. Like we never really take time to be in the present moment. Sometimes because in this Kenya or in adulting or in whatever reason we give, who has the time for being present?
Yes.
You know, all the
A
time.
lot of schedules, a lot of things to do.
Yes.
You
And
have to
then
be
you-
multi or
Yes,
whatever.
Yes. You're stressed. The last time you took, like you sat down with yourself and, you know, took stock or fully rested might not really be happening. So you tend to actually lose yourself in a sense, and then now we go into this autopilot mode.
Yes.
Where you're just doing, you're acting, things are automatic. Unajua ukiamka unafaa kuingia kwa bafu, ukunywe chai,
Yes.
utoke kama umelock. If you're asked what you had for breakfast or how you like what you were thinking when you were showering, you have no idea.
Yes, yes.
But you did all those things.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a function of your being on the run, never stopping to pause.
Okay.
I'd attribute it to that. But then in some cases, it is actually a product of anxiety, whereby your mind is so focused on whatever you're fearing
Yes.
that you're not disorient in the present. Yeah, so niyo like your fungo, so uta run back and forth, kitafuta, you're looking for the glasses that are on your face, you're
Yes,
looking
yes.
for, anxiety.
Yes, let's continue.
Right. So after that, we have the fear of losing control or going crazy. So it's just, So it's interesting that it's a fear, but it's also part of now symptoms of the fear. Yeah. And then we have fear of dying in like really extreme cases where it feels like I might actually die in this moment, and then now that becomes a fear, and then now you notice it exacerbates all these other things.
Yeah.
So you've already not breathing vizuri, and then you think you're dying, so now your breathing gets worse, and then it just becomes a whole cycle.
Yeah, is it this case? Is it part of that where someone walks on the road, and for some reason when they step out of the house, they have this fear of being knocked by a donkey, by like for them an accident equals so close, even on a clear road.
Yeah.
Is it part of that?
Yeah, it counts as now part of the thought processes of the generalized anxiety disorder, whereby your mind is just running over everything. So you've already overthought what could happen when you step on the road, what could happen. So it is part of the anxiety disorders. Yeah. Okay. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing well. You can continue to speak to us on our social media platforms, as you said, on Facebook and across, that is YouTube, generally on our mainstream media, that is NISI Television, and I believe that it will be a blessing to you. We love to hear from you, and of course, nakwambia, the content here is so much of a blessing and so much of an importance. Beulah, I have a case of a mother. Yeah.
After every 2 minutes, anaenda kucheck mtoika anapumua. Hadi ana and the child is fine, but maybe newly born. What do you how can I explain that? Probably in a night atamka like 30 times to check if the child is breathing.
It's interesting you bring that up, because that sounds definitely is an anxiety disorder, but then it's also very closely tied with now OCD. When we talk about OCD, and we're talking about the obsessive thoughts that come with now compulsive behaviors. So there could be this obsessive thought that my child is not safe, my child could die, my child could, and the only way to still those thoughts is to go and make sure they're alive. So you go, you check the heartbeat, you're like, okay, fine, they're alive. And then it comes again, and the only way to appease it is again to go check. So it becomes a whole, but it does sound a lot more like OCD, but with a lot of anxiety tenets as well. And I'd be interested to meet that person. Yeah.
Interesting. Were you done with the notes?
Yes.
Okay, let's look at the treatment and now that we know how to diagnose, how do we treat? Do we have a medical way to treat it? Do we have like, mesema sindano or something? Or someone has to attend some therapeutic sessions to overcome that stuff?
Okay. I'd like to say Therapy is for everyone, please. Whether
For real?
Yeah, therapy is for
Na kama
everyone.
hata kama unafeel uko poa,
Ando wambia therapist uko poa, mtaongea hiyo uko poa.
hiyo kupoa tutafafanua hiyo kupoa inamaanisha nini.
Yeah.
And maybe from there itafungua a lot of pages under niko poa.
Yeah. But therapy, it does a lot of good to everyone,
Okay.
I would say. It's always interesting. Like, even if we're not looking for problems, because sometimes we are accused of looking for problems, there's just that whole new aspect of self-awareness in different ways you didn't know. Hi, I'm good at this, or people experience me this way.
Yes.
Is this what I want or not? That's a whole other conversation, but yes, therapy is for everyone. So with that in mind, when we're talking about treating now the anxiety disorders, it goes back to the question of severity.
Yeah.
So there's cases whereby we could have talk therapy and that's enough. And there's cases where we can't even start talk therapy because the anxiety is so present.
Yeah.
We need something to shukisha it first, and then we can be able to talk.
Yes.
So now that's when we'd introduce what we call pharmacotherapy, which is just the use of medicine.
Okay.
And the only people that are allowed to prescribe that are psychiatrists and basically medical doctors who have now specialized in psychiatry, the mental disorders and everything. Yeah, so you'd go speak to one, they'd listen, they'd be able to know what to prescribe in terms of now anxiolytics or anti-anxiety dawas. They'd be able to check whether there's comorbidity with anything else, because sometimes, a lot of the times actually, when you're finding someone struggling with anxiety, there's depression somewhere there. For some people, there's PTSD, in that the root for these symptoms of anxiety could be from a traumatic experience that they had. And so perhaps that's what we actually need to be treating. So we'd be able to look at all that. And then now what's usually recommended is anytime you're doing medicine, please do it with talk therapy, because dawa only minimizes those symptoms. It only treats the chemicals in the brain and everything, but the root causes to why you're acting the way you are, why you're behaving the way you are, is still present. So that's where therapy comes in, where we are able to now talk about these things, what's been happening, what's the root, and even build up skills and build up new sets of, thinking patterns, new behaviors that could help you be more functional and help you, sasa, when you wind off dawa, to still remain functional. Yeah, because ideally, we don't like to give medicine for the rest of your life. No, it's just to get you stable, and then as you get stable, you learn what you need to learn, and then you learn to manage. Yeah.
What's the connection between anxiety disorder and bipolar?
It's are they connected? There's a lot of comorbidity with these mental disorders, whereby unapata you're suffering from one and there's symptoms of others. But when we're talking about bipolar is it's a mood disorder characterized by the two extremes. So we have the depressive episodes and we have the manic or hypomanic episodes, depending on the severity. Manic is really high, hypomanic is higher than normal but not as high. And so you'd find for anxiety, it comes with depression because of the negative thoughts. They would result in these feelings of anxiety. Also with depression, we get the thoughts of, being a failure, being worthless. And so when you're about to step into anything, there's just Nike. So there tends to be a lot of anxiety related with those negative thoughts that stem from depression. And then now on the mania side, we have, or the higher side, there's usually a fear of how long will this state last. So for bipolar, there's again various types. So there are those who stay longer on the depressive episodes and they're more severe than the high side. And then there are those who experience really high highs. So when they hit low, it's not as low, but for them it is, because they're so used to the high state. And so for someone who is more on the depressive side, once they get to the high side, there's always this fear for it's gonna end. It's gonna, like, I have 2 days to be productive, 2 days to meet my goals for the entire 3 or whatever amount of months, because when depression comes back, it's going to hit me hard and I won't be able to do anything.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's that anxiety in that sense. For the mania, which is like the really high, they'd experience some of this, but theirs is more because they're high, they're impulsive, they're happy-go-lucky. So sometimes some of the symptoms could look like anxiety, just because there's this pressure to do everything. So you'd find that even their talking is a lot. As you would experience with someone who is anxious and they're just trying to, calm themselves down or not try and show that they're anxious. So they talk a lot, and there's just this feeling of doing things again. I think that would also be a point, just getting as much done with the time you have before it goes away. Yeah.
Amazing. You've mentioned something. You've mentioned a psychiatrist, and you say that you are a therapist, and then we have another jargon called the counselor. So, who is who? Ama tuje tu wote tu ni daktari wa akili,
Tunaweza sema hivyo, but to understand, psychiatrists wameenda medical school, like the whole shebang of medical schools.
Those are doctors.
They are doctors.
Like medical doctors.
Yes, they are.
That person can cure malaria. Like can treat malaria.
Angependa, by the way, anaweza.
Oh, okay.
It's just that now they choose to specialize in the mental disorder, mental disorder side.
Okay.
Sisi wengine just put us in the same boat, we'd be happy. Psychologists, therapists, counselors, sometimes the terms are interchangeable. Sometimes the differences are very little, depending on the approaches that we're using.
Okay.
But that shouldn't be like a point for confusion. Yeah.
Amazing. Before we go for a short break, in Kenya presently, when you mention things like anxiety disorder, we were speaking about bipolar, isn't it vitu zinakani kama nza watu specific extreme on some end of the country somewhere,
Yeah.
But you, in line with the examples that you've given, we understand that these are, things that we keep on interacting with each and every day. For example, the fear of height, the fear of insects, those kind of stuff. Kwa nini in Kenya we have that kind of thinking of, these issues maybe is our too extreme. Ama, the other word that probably like using, the word, this is sick. And this is
Ujiseme
tu rosafi. So, mimi najua mimi ni sick nikianza kukof. But if I'm struggling, I have iso height, whatever, insect, fears, phobias, I don't really think it's a major issue. But nikianza cough nitatafuta antibiotics mahali ama tule hands, So what do you think?
You're right. But I think it's a cultural, what do we call it? I don't know if we should call it a cultural problem.
Yes.
Or there's just this sense, generally with anything mental health, hizo ni za wazungu, please us, we are fine.
Okay.
We make do. We just move.
Yes.
It could be because our parents didn't know better and their parents didn't know better and
Yes.
their parents didn't know better. And so they grew up knowing that you just have to deal. You feel these feelings, no one is ever, but then no one is ever going to say even me. So you think you're alone, and so you stay in that aloneness and you push and you push and you push.
Yeah.
And so your child is coming to tell you that they can't answer a question in class because they feel anxious. So you'll push them also.
Yeah.
So you pushed through.
Yeah.
You didn't even tell anyone.
Because is it kona CBC rahisi?
So I think that whole not knowing that it's a problem.
Yes.
Perhaps lack of an awareness plays a part in that, because you don't know the symptoms, you don't know what it looks like, you don't know that it is actually a thing that people can get help for.
Yes.
So you push yourself, and by extension you push everyone around you to just deal and make do. Then again, there's I think we've taken a really, really long journey to get these conversations on mental health going, as they're not where they need to be yet, but they're a lot further than where they're from. And so also that fight, that stigma that comes with unaona therapist, unaendaga kwa psychiatrist, unapewa dawa za akili, there's so much stigma around anything to do with mental health, which is I had to keep emphasizing therapy is for everyone. So that whole ukona shida kama, or afraid to say that, I'm seeing my psychologist because I have social anxiety. People like, kwani you're mad ama you like ni shida gani uko nazo mpaka lazima ukae na psychology counselor. You know? Yeah, yes. So there's the stigma that's related to that. I mean, I'm grateful for how far we're going. Yeah, but if we could all raise awareness, if we could all try to be a little more aware, and then you teach the next person that you hear speak out of ignorance, it would really push.
Okay.
Nimeshout.
Hey, and I'm telling you, our therapist is shouting. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, we take a short break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard of cases in the society of people murdering their spouses and their children? What about people beings throwing themselves off buildings? In our universities today, it's a den of crime. Students in drugs, students in habits like homosexuality, which also cuts across in our society today. What do you think? Is there anyone to blame? Do you think it's a major issue in our society? Welcome to the Divulge Show, a show whereby we unmask matters happening in the society, matters which the society shies away from speaking about. And this is a place where we'll journey with you as an individual and largely in the society to find the healing of the soul and the empowerment of the spirit. My name is Kesh Susan, and I will be your host every Tuesday from 9:30 to 11:30 here at Nisi Television, where we transform life through media. Welcome to the Divulge Show.
What is good health? How do we attain and maintain healthy living? We have answers concerning communicable, lifestyle, genetic and non-genetic diseases. Join me, Cecilia Mariri, and our medical experts every Wednesday morning from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. for informative and educative conversations. This is the 911 show on Nisi Television, where we transform lives through media.
Tayari amefundisha, amenena. Nashukuru Bwana, taongea mambo ya vipawa vya Roho Mtakatifu na karama ya walimu ni sehemu yake. We may not have a formal way of having a Bible study or even teaching. Toweza kosa nafasi ya kusema sasa chukueni Biblia tunataka tufanye Bible study ukiwa nyumbani ama kwa biashara. Lakini Bwana atapatiana a platform which might be informal platform. And the informal platform ni ya kwamba, labda tuseme kwa mfano ni ndugu yetu Kahodo anaongea na mtu wa nyumba, ama kuna biashara wanaongea juu yake, na wanapoongea, haleluya, huyu Roho Mtakatifu ambaye ameachiwa kanisa kipindi hiki, haleluya, atapatiana a informal platform ndio ufundishe hili neno la Bwana. Any chance that the Holy Spirit gives you as a platform, then pata nafasi hiyo na uitumie vizuri, haleluya. Na ukiitumia vizuri, what you speak, it will break their heart.
Five, six, seven, eight.
Hello, everybody. It's a sound of praise and worship.
Jehovah,
to whom created us. Join me, Joy Temba, every Sunday morning
or changeable.
from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m.
Only you can do.
Live on O.C.D Television for live Sunday service that is filled with the presence of God through worship, word, and encouragement.
If you gotta be for me, we'll love you, Lord.
You will live for.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're joining us this minute, we are talking about anxiety disorders and OCD. And pale ninaona social media, hey, tumechangamka. Of course, pale YouTube ninaona someone called, let me start with, Kolobondo, anasema following from Bethel House, good stuff. Daniel Ngaria anasema the place to be tuned in, of course, The Divilge. Thank you very much. We have Eastlands Church, DCC, anasema very timely. Branch Gary, I almost said Gary, anasema tuned in. Storm Gaming anachekelea Gary. Okay. Ruth Mwamela anasema tune in, very informative. Wilson Njenga anasema tune in. We have Jeffrey Obonyo anasema Brian Gary is strongly tuned in. Okay. Naona kuna utakuwa na shares Divulge. Michael Mwakera anasema good imperative questions. Sawa. Good grammar. Jeffrey Obonyo anasema so informative. And we have Atwan anasema awesome. Now 100% enlightened. Thank you very much for always watching The Divulge. Sijui kama nimemaliza. Collins anasema mimi naogopa roaches, fear of cockroaches, and anasema he needs a roach therapist.
Tuko, we are here for you, Kulu. We are here for you.
You're going to get, do you have, like, just a comment, because I'm nothing close to a counselor. The best I can be is a teacher, so probably should get a roach therapist to Collins Bondo. And of course, we continue with our conversation. How prevalent is anxiety disorders?
That's a really good question. So when we talk about it in the general scheme of things,
yes,
I was looking for numbers, and I found that it's really hard to find numbers in Kenya. I don't know if it's because our research iko nyuma. It's a thing for us psychologists, please. Our thesis needs to start thesising in terms of statistics and everything. But as at now, it's I think I'd like to call it a general population problem. Okay. Yeah, in that the numbers are higher than we need them to be. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Now, when we talk about anxiety disorder, The Divulge is also a spiritual show, and we are looking at it from, of course, a psychological side. But you, as a Christian, probably should tell us first if you are a Christian.
Yes, I am. Yes,
and if you are born again and Jesus is Lord in your life.
Indeed, he is.
Having that, that belief, we understand kuna a lot of notions. Hizi vitu ni mapepo, hizi vitu ni, ni spiritual. Maybe you can help us understand how we need to connect the spiritual bit of what you're talking about from, of course, now the psychological and the scientific side of it.
Right. So again, I think going back to how we started, of how anxiety is a normal thing.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of backed up by the number of times the Bible says, do not fear. I don't think it would be emphasized that much if fear wasn't a thing. It's said once for those ones who feel it. You sinners who feel fear, don't feel fear. And then we move on. But it's really repeated.
Yes.
And so I think it's because it's a thing that we are bound to experience, given that we're on this side of reality, where there's, all these things that, get to attack us. then again, because we are body, soul, and spirit.
Yes.
And so even though spirit is strong and, you know, spirit is being transformed into Christ-likeness, there is soul and there is body that is still susceptible to these things of this world. And so I think being both a Christian and being in the profession and being someone who has struggled with anxiety basically all their lives, it's given me a lot more compassion than just saying, you know, hizi ni mapepo, tutoe mapepo. So what encourages me or what encourages me and what I would like to say to other Christians who might know someone struggling with fear, maybe they are the voice for usiogope, unaogopa nini, twende tuombewe, twende tu, which are all good things.
Yes.
But then let's also be gentle and gracious and remember that like these areas of weakness are where God gets to shine through. I think the Bible says that, you know, his strength is made perfect in our weakness.
Yes.
And so that means, like Paul, we get to boast then in these weaknesses. Like I can come here and confidently say, I am anxious, but by God's grace, I am able to talk and form coherent sentences.
Yes.
And maybe make an impact, not because of anything that I did or that I learned to do, but because God is good and he chose to show his strength in this way.
Yes.
So for me as a Christian and as a professional, I look at it in that way, in the sense of, yes, kuna times za tunakemea na tutakemea, but after tumekemea pia tupende and we gently walk with this person, because it's a whole other process also, and learning, you know, things that you have done, things that, you know, have been keeping you sane, or you know, have been how you've learned to survive basically. Yeah.
Amazing. Officially Evangelist Beulah.
Huku natoka na titles.
Huku natoka na titles. Hauna choice. Hauna choice. Lazima umesema ni both. So therapist alafu huku umeongezewa evangelist.
Come on.
Wow. OCD. OCD, I have heard that statement, you can say to me one word, for years. But one thing that I know is that mimi napenda kunawa mikono.
Okay, tell us more.
Napenda, I like. Mimi, I don't mind. Naguza surface, I will just wash my hands. Sitasema sana ndo tusichome, you know, jua, you know.
Tushasema sana.
Hatujasema
sawa.
Ushaona guest na bully. It is well. Nitakuja therapy sessions. After this, nitakuja therapy sessions.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll
OCD.
take you up, please, listeners. Asipokuja next meeting, ask kwa comments. Yes.
Aseme,
next show.
Casually.
Yeah. Kesh, did you go for therapy?
Isi vita dad.
I'll be live on YouTube watching to answer.
Host wa Divulge alikata sessions.
Right.
It is well. Back to you. OCD.
Right.
Yes. What is OCD?
OCD, before I go back to your hand washing and ask more questions, sorry. OCD, so again, back to the DSM-5, which is our big book for everything. We call it obsessive compulsive and related disorders. So that's the umbrella where OCD falls under. So now under that umbrella, then we have OCD, which is the obsessive compulsive disorder. Then we have other disorders such as body dysmorphic disorder, where you're looking at your body, it's like you're obsessed with what you perceive to be flaws, things that are not right. Other people may not be able to see it, or they can't see it as the same. Like utashinda insist, no, my finger is bigger than this one, and everyone is looking, they're just like,
Ziko sawa.
Yeah, exactly, ziko sawa, but like there's just that obsessive thought of it not being okay, and then you get fixated on those flaws. So either you'd look at the mirrors all the time, or you're constantly comparing ko Instagram tu kiangalia guy tumbo yake ko na yangu na yake, and then it becomes a whole.
Ameanza kushout.
Sorry. So the next one we have is hoarding disorders. Yo kuweka vitu.
Hoarding.
Hoarding. HOARDING. Hoarding. Yes. Which is basically you keeping things that you don't need. And it's the fear for I might need them, or what if I don't have enough things? So you might buy things you don't need, keep things you don't need, steal things you don't need, until it becomes there's no room to function because all you have are things that you don't need.
Saying for friend. Inile unamalizanga deodorant and then you not throw.
Ay, watu wanasikia unashout.
Nasema tu you not throw that.
Yes, you have a whole display of all your deodorants, all your perfume bottles, containers za Blue Band, Prestige. Ziko tu hapo hazitumiwi, but in case you might need them, they're all there. Bottles for plastic bottles, a lot of plastic things.
Yeah.
And you don't realize this. Yes. Paper bags, especially when the plastic ones are still in use. Like your sink, hapo chini ya sink kuna uchumi, Tuskys. I'm not shouting at anyone's mom, but
it is well.
You know? Yes.
And is it also like inaweza onekana pia for like you find someone you've either added weight or lost weight, but you will not do away with the clothes that can't fit you. Is it part of that?
In a sense, it could be. So now with that one especially, I'd be curious to examine the thoughts. Like, is it that you're are you hoping you'd go back? Did you want the weight loss? So I'd like to, interrogate that a bit more. But it falls in the sense that you're keeping things that you don't need anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Continue, please.
So we also have under that broad umbrella that we are not entering very deeply because you're going to OCD, but just to understand everything that comes after that.
Yes.
We have the next two are very hard words, trichotillomania disorder, which is pulling out your hair. Could be hair ya kichwa ama hair. So it becomes a repetitive disorder, like they'll just pick out their hair. And the other one we have is excoriation, where you're now picking at your skin. Just because, and I feel I was writing that one down and I was like, could I have this one? Because I like to pick out my cuticles just because they don't bother me, it doesn't do anything for me to remove them. But when I get anxious or in social situations, I find myself, that's how I fidget. And so that's why we say for all this OCD related and anxiety, they kind of overlap. They kind of overlap. And this, they're placed under the same umbrella. I know they sound like they're not the same thing, but the OCD together with body dysmorphic, together with the hair pulling, they're placed under the same umbrella because they also have tenets of, they kind of overlap in terms of now the thoughts that would be going on, the attempts to stop, but you can't. You're trying to not pull your hair, but you can't.
Like, unaona vile nimeshtuka. Like
I
even my
saw it,
facial
like you
expression.
pull, everything changed.
Like literally, you pull your hair out.
Yeah.
You like you're feeding from that pain, ama.
It's not about the pain. It's just you just pull your hair out. There's
Reason?
that's the thing. It's a compulsive behavior.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you try stop, you can't. So for some, it's like an anxiety way of fidgeting. I was just going to say biting lips, and then I saw you biting lips, and I was like, let's not shout at her, but we just
I do that.
Yes. So for some, that hair pulling could be a product of, like you're working on something, and then you realize by the time you're done, you've pulled out hair. You weren't really conscious. Or, yeah.
All right.
So that's why it kind of overlaps, because for some, it could be an anxiety. Like a way of you trying to soothe your anxiety.
So you mentioned biting of lips.
I do that as
of course,
well.
tuko wengi, so.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So those are, again, the major five, and then now the others are substance or medication induced. And then the obsessive compulsive and related disorders due to a medical condition or unspecified. Those last four are usually the same things, substance or medical, substance or medication, and then other medical condition, and then specified or unspecified.
Yes.
Yeah. So now when we're talking about now OCD as a disorder under this big umbrella of obsessive and compulsive related disorders, we have to distinguish, the difference between, well, to understand it, we start by breaking down the terms. So we have the word obsessive and the word compulsions. So having OCD could be a presence of either or both. It could be just
Okay.
obsessions or just compulsions, but a lot of the times it's both of them together.
Okay.
So obsessions are recurrent and persistent thoughts or urges or images that the person experiencing them will say they are intrusive, they're not voluntary, zinakuja tu. And they are unwanted, they don't want them to be there. So now they try and remove them by either trying to not focus on them
Yes.
or trying to soothe them now by doing these compulsive behaviors. And
For
so,
example?
okay, let me describe compulsions and then we join them together.
Feel free.
So we have compulsions, which are now the repetitive behaviors or mental acts that you feel driven to do in response to now the obsession. And sometimes you find it's acts or behaviors whereby there's rules that have to be applied. So this one I think we've had a lot or seen a lot in movies where like someone has to do things in threes, for example. You wash your hands thrice, or you check the door thrice, or you... So, okay, putting them together to give the for example.
Yes.
There could be the obsessive thought that... I'm not shouting at you, Kesh. Can we agree?
It's okay.
So there could be this obsessive fear of contamination, germs, right? And so there's this feeling of everything is dirty, and it's just the thought that you're getting contaminated, you might get sick, and so to soothe that, because that sounds like the kind of thing you can't really turn off and just like move on, because it becomes very distressing, and then again it impairs functioning, which is why it becomes a disorder. So to soothe that, we get into now the cleaning behaviors that can be, that are now compulsive.
Yes.
So the washing of hands, the washing of things, the cleaning things in a certain way. And so when we're talking about OCD, actually one of the diagnostic criteria is it has to take a considerable amount of time. So, and I like how you started by saying, is it familiar? Is the term OCD familiar? Because I feel like we all use it to some certain extent. I can't have my things like this, I'm OCD like that. No. It has to take a considerable amount of time in your day, you feeding those, obsessions and by the compulsive behaviors for it to meet the criteria. And so other examples or other common themes we have are, there could be the theme of symmetry, so that would be the obsession that things have to be in order. And so the compulsive behavior for that would be now the ordering, the arranging. So you'd find for some people just like to have their things in alphabetical order. Other people cannot afford to not have their things in alphabetical order. So the difference would be, if I just like to have my things that way, I can bear the thought of them not being that way because I am running late to my interview with Cash. I'll come back and arrange them. Whereas if it was OCD, I can't do anything else until I arrange these things in order, and it will take time, and I'll probably be late. Or even if I do decide to go see Cash first, it will disturb me to the point I will literally stand, leave, go home, arrange them, then see how to call Cash and apologize. Then there's, forbidden or taboo thoughts. So these as obsessions would be aggressive thoughts of aggression or sexual thoughts or religious thoughts that now to soothe them would be a compulsive behaviors related to all these avenues. So there's people who just... This one now doesn't, I was going to say it doesn't sound normal, and then I remembered we're talking about disorders.
Yeah, just say divulge tunasemanga vile iko. Black and white.
Probably feeling like you want to punch someone or stab someone, there's no reason. You just feel the need to stab someone or punch someone. Or your mind is just full of sexual urges or sexual thoughts or sexual images that you can't seem to shake or get rid of. And it's not those ones where you're putting in your mind,
like you're watching some content and imekudefile. It's not that.
Yes. Because sometimes these images are based on things that you've watched. Or experienced, but you see the way you can recall, like the way you can sit down and decide, I'm thinking about my crush now, and then it's wanted, it's something that you want to be in, but these ones just happen and you can't get rid of them. They are intrusive, zinakuja bila permission. And now religious, so now what we find is you get to like you'd find someone praying, and it's more of like it doesn't sound like prayer. It's just like saying words because it's a compulsion. Like you feel like you have to. If you don't, something bad will happen. So you have to say this specific prayer, this specific number of
in
times,
a specific
this
way.
specific, yes. Because if you don't do that, then something will happen. Yeah, and that's when it becomes a disorder. That because the something will happen, and what you're doing, they don't make sense. They're not like, you can't look and be like, oh yeah, this makes it's realistic.
Yeah.
No.
Like I went to some place for mission, and we entered in this specific homestead, and this homestead, they were hosting us, and before we sleep, there was a specific character there, mwenye kulala lazima, angechukua bucket, maji, and can salt, and this person had to like sprinkle the walls before we sleep. If the person will not do that, then the whole night is screams and seeing images, and the person believed that the salt was supposed to chase some demons. Yeah. Can
so
we? Is that a mental issue also, or is what we're talking about?
It's a compulsive behavior what he's doing. But then again, is it interesting? But like with mental disorders, they really tend to as a Christian, I would say they tend to overlap with spiritual issues, because the fact that they're actually having experiences then points to something more than just obsession and behaviors to tend to this obsession. But the fact that he has to do it, and it's kind of like his way of treating it, then does actually qualify as OCD.
All right.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah. Then we have harm. So we're still talking about the common themes of obsessions and compulsive behaviors. So harm would be fear of harm coming to you or harm coming to others. And so then again, compulsive behaviors would be things like now having to check the door. Did I really lock? Is the baby really breathing? Goes back to that one we were saying, is just having to check and make sure, is everything okay? Am I going to be okay? Are the people around me going to be okay? And the things that you're doing, sometimes they make sense. It's just that they are overboard to this threat. And sometimes they really just don't make sense. Like even that one for the spraying salt water, it's about harm, right? If I don't, I'll be harmed.
Yes.
And maybe the things that I'm experiencing will harm the people in the room with me, so I have to spray salt water. Yeah. Or I have to pray certain prayers in certain ways.
In a certain way.
Yeah. Or I have to count certain times before I do certain things, because if I don't, I'll get harmed or something. Yeah.
Interesting. What causes OCD? What's the trigger?
So now that one is a hard one. It's even easier explaining anxiety. Again, we go back to the nature debate that will come up in every question, of course, relating to mental
health.
Yes. So there's the genetic component. If there's history of, usually even when we're doing the clinical interviews, if there's history of any mental disorder, in the family, whether or not it's what the person is presenting with, then we put that there is a predisposing factor. So that's always an aspect of it. And as I'm saying that, I'm just like, is there any family without mental disorder? Really, I don't know. You guys could tell me. So there's that aspect, and then there's now the nature, the environment. And so with OCD, a lot of the times, there's history of trauma somewhere. A lot of the times, whereby whatever these obsessive thoughts are based on, sometimes there is actual evidence. Could be childhood trauma, could be recent trauma, but the fact that there is evidence, so you can say, no, I have to check the door every 15 minutes because one time I didn't, robbers actually came in So history of trauma really, for OCD, it really plays a part. Again, if we read the DSM, we'd find the whole shebang of the temperaments and personality and things like that. But it's not. We don't have a straightforward answer for this one. If this happens, then you,
I've heard this statement whereby you find someone who is quote unquote extremely clean, when they were growing up, their guardian was very strict, probably in things like toileting and how you just clean up and all that. Could that be the reason, or part of the reason, in line with, is it nature or nurture? Nurture?
That one would be nurture.
Nurture.
Yeah. Nature is just basically genes peke. Anything that you are born with is nature. Yeah. So temperaments would also fall under nature. Then everything that is now external outside you becomes nurture. So yeah, that is definitely nurture. That does play a part. Because then now it forms there's a lot of theories that I could talk about, but I won't, that would, point to the same thing. But the thing is, it basically forms a certain schema in your head for why you have to function that way. So it could be also, how are things being communicated?
Yes.
So if you've been called mean words and it was being put to you very harshly, yes, then you would want to do it to be the exact opposite of this thing.
Yes.
If I leave this pen, without the cap on, then I become all these things I was called when I was young. And those were hurtful. And so I have to make sure I am prime and proper because that's how I protect myself from even me calling myself those words that I have grown up being called. But then you notice that some are, and you notice that the parents are also very clean, and it's just how they were brought up. When you're done using things, you put them away, and it just became part of how they function. Yeah, so there's definitely how we were raised plays a huge part, a really, really huge part in who we are and how we behave and why we do the things we do.
Yes.
But it's just that there's always a healthy side and an unhealthy side, which is why, again, I'll shout therapy, because we get to unpack, okay, so why must everything be put away for you? Is it something that is just a you thing, or could there be something deeper to it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe before we go for a short break, we interact with people who chew the pen lids. And of course, not you.
Yeah.
The lid and probably their nails and they suck their fingers. Na tutaki kusema miaka because ni aibu.
Yeah.
So is that part of what you're talking about, or is something different before we go for a break?
It would classify. It's just that there's no big fancy name for it, but it would classify under compulsive disorders.
Okay.
And then it's also borderline anxiety, because a lot of those behaviors are those things you do to try and mitigate anxiety or stress. So you find that when you're okay, you're not eating your nails, you're not chewing your fingers, but take a stress, or you're working on an assignment and the adrenaline rush, by the time you're done, you look at your hands and it's just like, oh my gosh, what happened, and same for chewing things.
I have friends of mine, they have half nails and we're not shooting.
We're not talking about
that. We don't know.
I hear you. I know some people as well.
We're not shouting. Is it? It's not. It's purely anxiety and a mental issue. It's not like a behavioral thing.
Sometimes interesting. Sometimes it could be in terms of picking up. So you see the way a child would, like, if we get how do I give this? My cousin used to, she was tiny, she was I think like 2, and so every time my grandfather would walk in the room, he used to walk with his hands behind his back with like a slight limp. So every time anamwona, she'd stand up and start walking like him. And it's not because she has a limp or anything, it's just learned behavior. So sometimes we do that. We learn behavior, we can't explain. When Kesha akifanya hivi akikula her lips, and I was like, ish, she looks like a thinker, she looks like she knows what she's doing, so I start doing it. Yes. And then I actually learn it, but it's not that it's dealing with anxiety for me. Gradually it may become what actually helps me with my anxiety, but the root of it wasn't that. It's just that I saw Kesh and I copied her behavior. I learned from her behavior. Okay. So some of these things could be that in terms of noticing how our caregivers used to handle certain things. Yeah. Like I think I got that from my mom. Okay. And I've run with it, and dropping it would I need to, but Yeah, I'll find a lip therapist. Minakulot tatafuta those specific.
Roach therapist.
Right.
I also have a cousin, but we'll talk about the cousin after the break.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard of cases in the society of people murdering their spouses and their children? What about human beings throwing themselves off buildings? In our universities today, it's a den of crime. Students in drugs, students in habits like homosexuality, which also cuts across in our society today. What do you think? Is there anyone to blame? Do you think it's a major issue in our society? Welcome to the Divulge Show, a show whereby we unmask matters happening in the society, matters which the society shies away from speaking about. And this is a place where we'll journey with you as an individual and largely in the society to find the healing of the soul and the empowerment of the spirit. My name is Kesh Susan, and I will be your host every Tuesday from 9:30 to 11:30 here at Nisi Television, where we transform life through media. Welcome to the Divulge Show.
What is good health? How do we attain and maintain healthy living? We have answers concerning communicable, lifestyle, genetic and non-genetic diseases. Join me, Cecilia Mwariri, and our medical experts every Wednesday morning from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. for informative and educative conversations. This is the 911 show on Nisi Television, where we transform lives through media.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Pale Facebook ninaona bro Sami Kafugi anasema I'm loving the conversation. The knowledge dispensed there is just amazing. Keep up. Thank you very much, bro Sami Kafugi. And then we have top fan Steve King anasema tune in from Githurai 44. We have Princess Gitau anasema tune in. Na tukivuka pale YouTube, I'm telling you, ninaona tuko na mtu anaitwa Roach therapist. We have Michael Mwakera anasema but then anajibu kulana, but the only therapist for roaches in Idum. Very true. We have Wilson anasema so informative. And then Brian anasema pulling your hair. Wow, very interesting. By the Beulah, that for me was like, hey, okay, I didn't know that happens, but that's why we are in the Divulge.
You know.
Michael Makera anasema Beulah, people who have certain order on cloth line, e.g. matching pegs. Wait, is that O.C.D? Maybe you can answer that. Mutu ana hang clothes na red, blue, green. No, see mixed colors are pegs. Please, usi mix colors are pegs.
Yes.
Yes. What do you think?
It does actually classify as a compulsive behavior.
That's not obsession.
So not the obsession, it goes back to the classification we had. The obsession would be symmetry or order. So it has to look a certain kind of way. So huyu na mwenye ana range between alphabetical, in colors, in the same WhatsApp. But then now again the pointer is it taking you a lot of time to do this? Because we talked about how it has to take considerable amount of time in your
Yes.
day, at least an hour
Uh-huh.
of you experiencing these obsessive thoughts and now deciding to finally engage in the compulsive behaviors. So on the one day that you can't watch a Peg Zibo, like what will happen? If that what will happen question ni tricky to answer, then yeah, we might need to have
Hebu
a
unaona
chat.
kama nguo zitakauka ama we have Kolobondo anasema, is there something like hoarding money, fear of being broke?
For money, yes, but would we classify it under OCD? Not really, because then for hoarding, it's to an extent where there's like it has to physically fill up your space. But then yes, it becomes now. You remember we talked about thoughts, urges, and images.
Yes.
So that would be under thoughts. That one for I can't not have this money. So we're putting it somewhere. So when we look at you and we come to your space, it's all nice and neat and there's nothing out of place.
Yes.
But you're hoarding money. You're literally denying yourself things because of the fear of not having it. It does classify.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we continue. We have Marion Jiru anasema, tune in, very informative. Shout out to Dr. Beulah. Sawa daktari.
Titles, my guys. Wow.
Sheila Hadassa Acheng anasema, following good stuff. Big up Sheila. Thank you for watching. We have Nduta Kiniu anasema, tune in, very informative. Thank you very much, amazing people, for always keeping it the Divulge, of course, with Kesh Susan. Now we continue with the awesome conversation. What are the categories and the symptoms of OCD? Like vile tulikuwa na anxiety disorders. When we come to OCD, do you have also the classifications?
Yes, the ones we started with. It's just that now obsessive compulsive and related disorders becomes the big umbrella.
Okay.
And then now under OCD just becomes OCD as itself. So now we look at the prevalence, the frequency, like how long is this going on for? Is it time consuming? Like the amount of time you take to engage now in these obsessive thoughts, like the distress you'll sit in when the thoughts are present, the time you'll take to do the behaviors to soothe this, become now also something that we look at in order to classify it. And we said the criteria is it has to take more than 1 hour a day of you sitting in those thoughts or you trying to do that behavior. Yeah. So if it's just those ones for those few minutes, something is upsetting you, but if you walk out of the room, you're fine, then it doesn't classify as OCD. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, can OCD trigger another mental, emotional issue?
Yes. Because you'd find it becomes, so again, back to what we've been saying.
Yes.
Everything to do with all these mental disorders, we have to look at how it affects your functioning, right? So to the point, and so with things like this, you'd find that it becomes easier to avoid situations that would trigger. Like najua nikitoka kwa nyumba, there are germs from the moment I leave my house, because my house is the only safe space, right?
Exactly.
So,
and my hands are the only clean hands.
So I know already, like the moment I leave, everything I touch, everywhere I meet, even the air I breathe is contaminated. So I'd rather stay in my own bubble, but then you see there's no one coming into my bubble because even them, they have germs. So what ends up is you're withdrawn and depression can very easily come in. There's already anxiety, of course, because these two are very closely related. So it spirals into, it feeds a lot of other disorders.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And probably we can, as we conclude, what are some of the ways that we can, diagnose OCD?
So observation for
Observation.
one. Yes. And so this one for self might be tricky because we're not always, 100% objective with ourselves. So if I can be able to monitor Kesh, also, well, the people close to you.
Yes.
Yeah, and just paying attention to the things that tick them off. And seeing how distressing is this to them, how long do they take to sit in it. Yeah. So that we don't classify everything as OCD, because if we just leave it free, everyone will have OCD, because there are certain things we do specifically. But then we need to notice that if it's beyond the developmental, what do you call it? The developmental stage.
Yes.
Then it's a problem. And so how do we get to diagnose it? Yes, observation of self and the people close to us. Therapy. Because you're able to get insight into some of the things you'd never think was something else.
True.
What are the treatments available from that point? So if it's severe, again, medicine, dawa comes in handy to just help to punguza. And so for OCD, they tend to use certain kinds of, a class of medicine called SSRIs, which are used for depressive disorders. So for OCD, they up the dose so that it can cater to that. And then now, again, we have to do therapy. And what really works well is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. I bet it's a word everyone has heard if you've ever tried to look up therapy. And what's good about this one is that it points to the thought, behavior, feeling connection. So what I think affects how I feel, affects how I behave. So we're looking to change the thought to see how it changes the feeling and then how that changes the behavior. And then we get to teach other techniques, and this applies to the anxiety disorders as well, such as, you know, relaxation techniques so that you're able to bring yourself down. We teach, you know, how to really just manage yourself, how to take care of yourself, self-care, how to make sure you just, you know, optimum on everything. And then now we teach also, these are the skills such as stress management, all these things that could be triggers. We get to address them and give them, you know, healthier outlets through therapy, as well as now the root cause for someone who it could have been childhood trauma. We get to process that. And then, you know, through that, then the behaviors might actually change. Yeah.
Interesting. Sometimes it can be very difficult for someone with someone with OCD living with or interacting with a friend that has no OCD. And actually I've been bullied before by someone with an extreme, you know, side of OCD and all that. What can you tell someone who has OCD in line with relating to others? You know, do you advise them to be conscious of it and probably try to accommodate? Because kuna wale nimesema ama, like for example my case, when I realized that I will have I think I can thank God for COVID, because tuko tunasalimianaje, even probably will avoid shaking hands. But now I don't have a problem because I just know I'm the one you don't have a problem, and actually it's a bit extreme. So I'll just say hi to you and go and wash my hands. But maybe someone will even avoid you know, shaking hands and all that. Maybe you can look at that camera and, you know, help that person.
Well, I get you on the space for, you know, living room for others.
Yes.
I think the challenge in beat is actually in the name, the fact that these things are obsessive and they're compulsive. They're utakuwa sawa ukishake my hand no menda. Sitakuwa sawa from the moment of thinking of how I have to shake your hand. It is distressing. And so it makes sense for why they would actually avoid or be so strict on certain things, because it is so distressing for them. So what would be advised is let's get help for it. Let's get help for it. Let's go to therapy. Let's talk to a psychiatrist if we need to, so that now we're able to reduce the distress even for you yourself. And then now we can talk about accommodating certain things. And I guess another approach that would be important to mention that works for OCD is what we would call exposure therapy. Okay. So with your therapist, pole, we just introduce these two things that irk you, and we see how would you sit in it? What would that do? You know? And slowly we're able to then put in the skills or, you know, do what we need to do to get to that behavior change. Yeah, so what am I saying? That it's for the people with the less extreme forms or no form at all of OCD to kind of like understand. Let this not be a tactic of manipulation, please, because it's easy to now say, I have OCD, accommodate me. No, but let's understand, for there are people who it's genuinely so distressing, they can't afford to put compromises. And so what can they do? They can seek help for it, so that we're not always making room for you.
Yes.
That could be the effort that you can make to now accommodate others. Yeah.
Because in a context of marriage, it can be very tricky when someone is really extreme.
Yeah.
I've had cases of you umeroll tissue anti-clockwise, clockwise. I mean,
Yes.
you toothpaste umefinyaje, you know, and probably to the one who has no OCD or less straight in that line will feel more affected. Like, by the way, when uko kwa dunia gani, like you seem not to be in the same the same world that I'm in. You sound extreme, you know, and you really need help.
Yeah.
And actually, I think to some of the cases probably I've had in, you know, marital relationship generally, even a friend, your sister, nisijui umeacha vitu wapi, you know, that kind of thing. And you believe that the other person who has no OCD should also seek therapy, ama for them it's just adaptive?
I believe they would. Again, therapy is for everyone, and then in certain contexts it makes so much sense, and it's so much more helpful if you could be in therapy together, because now you get to understand why is my person the way that they are, you know, and you get to pick up things that probably unge classify as utiaji tu, anatakanga tu vita, sasa tishu ni kitu ya kufaitia, unapenda tu kufight, you know.
Yes.
But you know, in therapy you'd get to understand perhaps there's something as to why things are like that. Perhaps they were raised by that harsh mother we're talking about, who would give critic upon critic for everything that is not perfect.
Yes.
And so everything has to be prime and proper. It's not almost, it is to the T, you know? And so going to therapy together means you get to explore these together. And so you get to understand how you can be of support to them, and they also get to understand what that is doing to you, right? Because in as much as it's an obsession and it's compulsive for them, it has an effect on the next person, and sometimes they don't see it, you know, they're so closed up in how it's affected me, and you're wronging me because all you need to do is just do the right thing, that they don't see how their reactions affect the next person. And so it becomes important to then do therapy together, because now you're both able to understand how to support each other, how to make accommodations. For the one that needs to start doing things a little more like the OCD person likes them, you were able to explain them in you know, healthy communication in a safe space. And for the person that needs to also come down to the next person's level, then you're also able to do that in a safe space.
Yes.
Yeah.
How are you able to identify OCD in a child and tame it before it becomes something major, before when, you know, in their growing up?
That's a good question. So for children, they're not able to articulate things as they would. You know, for an adult, you'd say, no, I like them like this, or there's a way you can zusha until you get what you want.
Nataka kupanga pegs kwa hivyo.
Right. Hatushauti anybody, but yeah. Yeah, so for children, they're not really able to articulate things like that.
Yes.
But you'd notice either they get upset or they throw tantrums after certain things. There's two behaviors that they would do that makes you wonder, is this really extreme? Because then again, all these things you're talking about, especially in relation to the compulsions, because those are the ones we can see. The thoughts we may not really be able to know. Unaweza sumbuka in silence, but the compulsions shout, you know, the thoughts going on. And so for a child, those are some of the things you'd be able to pick on. Are they counting consistently? Are they repeating certain words or certain phrases? Are they engaging in repetitive behavior, basically? Because that's what the compulsions are. Yes. So once you notice that, then we engage a therapist as soon, so that for them now behavioral-based therapy would be the best, because they're still moldable, like we can shape their behavior. And then as they get older and using, you know, therapies like play and art, then we're able to explore, okay, so what is this child really thinking? What sense are they making of the world as they're having to engage in this kind of things? Yeah, but once you observe certain behavior trends, just speak to a specialist and they'll be able to pick it up from there. Yeah.
Now connecting anxiety disorders and OCD, you find some people very sensitive with probably their appearance. You know, I am too tall, and there is always a too. T-O-O, you know, I'm too light, I'm too dark, I'm too this and this, I don't like this. I'm always on heels so that I'm not too short, or I don't appear too short. You know, that kind of thing. Where do we classify that?
It depends. It depends on the severity, it depends on the distress, it depends on the root of the cause.
Okay.
So, which is why we said these two really tend to overlap. So there's a way it would have started as anxiety, but it persists mpaka inakuwa now the body dysmorphic disorder.
Okay.
You know, because of now it's backed up by the looking in the mirror, or you know, really doing this other compulsive behaviors to make up for the distressing thoughts that are now obsessions. But there's a way it could be, you know, a form of anxiety in terms of social anxiety, you know, where there's this fear of how will I be received by, you know, whoever I'm engaging with. And then again, it becomes even trickier in this era of social media where, you know, there's standards being set and they're changing every second, and you're still trying to find, okay, where do I fit in this last standard? Now they like thigh gaps. Oh wait, they don't like that anymore. What do I need to do? So it becomes a whole ball. You find depression very easily comes into that party. So sometimes it's hard to distinguish, but once you come in to therapy, then we're able to unpack that until we're left with a clear, you know, what is really happening here. Did it start as a thought? Did something happen? Was a word spoken? Were you rejected? And just, you know, being able to trace these connections until we're able to really see what it is, and then come up with a treatment plan to now, you know, mitigate, you know, what's happening, reduce the anxiety, the distress, and get back to normal functioning.
Amazing. There is a whole stigma about matters therapy and attending counseling sessions, and I think when you show me mention the word therapy
so many
times. I'm like, guys, you guys are sick. Well, I like saying that.
Meet me in my office.
Disclaimer.
Meet me in my office.
So there is kuna your big stigmatization. You know, me as can I call myself a patient or a client?
Yeah, client.
Unajua client naka umesema tools client uko na majina zikai therapy lakini zote zinakaa hardware fulani.
What would you like for me to do? How can I meet you where you are?
Nikakuja kwa hardware for therapy sessions. Let's continue. Kisikia mtu anakuambia tools, we anakuambia tools. Issue by that, let's not Okay, let's continue. So in a counseling session, like you know, your room as a client, what do I expect? Kwa sababu huku nje zile vitu tunajua kwanza kwenda kwa room ya daktari peke yake. Wacha ya daktari, office ya principal. If you remember your deputy principal back in that school. So nyinyi wawili kwa hiyo ofisi kwanza ni traumatizing, very traumatizing, all right? Like any adult. Nyinyi peke tu alafu sasa the medical part of it. Mimi na daktari kwanza nione anafungua packets fulani.
Akazi kujivo.
Unaona? So kwa counseling nina expect nini? Na expect kuita, oh darling, please don't. Unaona, nina like room kwaje ni conducive ama, you know, nina expect nini kwa your session?
Ideally, therapy is supposed to be a safe space. If it is not, it is not therapy. It's just adding trauma. And so what you need to know is that you are allowed to say that you're not feeling safe. You are allowed to find another therapist. Because sometimes unafeel ni kama ni punishment. Session ya kwanza didn't go well, you didn't feel heard, seen, understood, nothing, you didn't feel helped. but you feel like you have to go back because you're not allowed to change, or because there feels like there's this power dynamic. But ideally, therapy is client-based. So if anyone is a boss there, it's the client, right?
Okay.
And so you need to be aware of that. Be aware that you are allowed to change if you don't feel safe. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to basically bring yourself into the room. And that room is supposed to feel safe. That person is supposed to feel safe. That relationship is supposed to feel safe.
Yes.
Because it's actually, we usually say the relationship is more healing than whatever we talk about or the theories that will apply. Just the fact that you can come and connect with someone in a safe, healthy way, that in itself is very healing. It makes up for relationships that you didn't even think were being affected or were affecting you.
Yes.
For example, primarily the parent-child relationships. Yes. So what should you expect? You should expect to feel seen. You should expect to feel heard. You should expect to feel like your therapist is trying to understand you. We might not understand you at the first time because, you know, we're also human. We come with our own experiences.
Yes.
But at least you can tell that there's that effort. Anauliza maswali ndio ajue. You don't feel judged. You shouldn't feel judged when you're in therapy. So yeah, I don't know if that answers or if I should keep going. But basically a non-judgmental, safe space. That's what you need to be expecting. That's what you need to be looking for. If you don't find it, session 1, session 2, then you're allowed to leave and perhaps look for a place where you can find it. Because then again, is we end up with stories of people who are staying with therapists who unfortunately are not acting ethically. And then now it becomes a bad name for us in the field because, you know, the hurt you get from there, it's just like, mimi niende therapy tena. And then you go tell your friend, we wachana na therapy. Me, let me tell you what happened. And then no one ends up going to therapy.
Oh, my counselors. Ow. Fisi.
Kwanza, yeah.
Unavuta fisi, unavuta mbwea.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
The
continue.
same way, you know, the same way when you're going to Pasi in church, you're expecting that safety, that spiritual, and some trauma in ways that are just, they shouldn't. But then it traumas for now everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. So leave, report if you can. We have bodies for that. Yeah. The make sure they're registered. And so if they act in a way that's not right, you are allowed to report. And then please do find another therapist because you went there for a reason. And it's important that that reason actually gets met.
Yes. We have a concern. From the medical field, we have what you call the HIF, am I right? Which in a subsidize the pay of the medical treatment and all that. When we come to counseling, your charges, and you know, from that angle, we cannot say that, by the way, it's we don't want to come for therapy, you know, speaking for the majority. So, mi nataka kuja, ama there is someone who really wants to come for therapy sessions. And therapy sessions like 10, nini, but one session itself, it's a good amount. So what can you say about that? And you know, as the counseling board and the people who are facilitating that, I'm not, maybe you can tell us who, you know, from that top board, who runs the whole counseling field, the agendas and the structures that are set so that you can have that kind of, you know, that kitu kama NHIF that will help people, clients, patients to easily access counseling sessions.
That's a really important, that one is now shouting
at
us, yes. But it's true, there's a really huge gap in the mental health field.
Yes.
And I think part of that, or a lot of that, can be attributed to the stigma that's attached with mental health, especially back in them days where mental health equals mathare, equals, you know, madness and everything that's wrong. And so no one ever wants to say or be known for madhare or for anything related to that.
Yes.
And so I think even when they were coming up with the whole insurance policies and everything, it was let's treat what we can see. Hizo zenye tuoni we deal nazo utakuwa fiti, tutakuombea, you know, and uone watu wenu pastor, you know. But now they are, I would say things are coming up. As that now NHIF covers for therapy for civil servants.
Okay.
So it's our hope and our bodies are still pushing these agendas and just, you know, creating room, having our voices being heard, that this is something that every person needs. It's not for the rich, it's not for the privileged, it's for every person. It's necessary for every person. So yeah, that's what's happening. So far we can at least rejoice that civil servants are able to access those services. There are other insurance bodies that, you know, are able to now provide room for that.
Yes.
For their they call them clients. Yes. So yeah, I don't want to mention them by name lest I...
You're a professional.
But there's some that do, they tell you, okay, you go see the therapist, you pay, and then we'll pay you back. You just give us a claim form.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's something that's coming up. Are we there yet? No. Are there things being done? Yes.
We have one more questions. Now na time yetu inaenda vizuri. Someone is asking, is OCD an anxiety disorder too big of a problem, or it's not that major?
I like to say, as a philosophy, if it's stressing you, if it's bringing you distress, then it's big enough to call it a problem. It may not be the same, you know, level or the same thing for everyone.
Yes.
But don't invalidate yours because the other person sounds bigger. So yes, it is a problem, and what we look at is how much distress is it causing you. Is it causing you any distress, one, and then how much distress? Yeah, so that's...
Wow, I believe we've come to the end of the show, and it's really been a blessing having you on board. Kindly look at this camera and give us, you know, your parting shot, your summary, you know, and it will be a blessing in line with what we've been discussing. Mtu mwenye amejoin saizi na anapata at least apate a few points as a float.
Right. Come for therapy, guys. It's helpful. It's helpful for you. And then again, you know, we have the wonderful counselor with us, which is such a gift, the gift of the Holy Spirit, the gift of Jesus.
Yes.
And he works with people as well. So yeah, embrace him.
Yes.
Embrace us in the profession, not because I want your money, but because I genuinely want you to be whole. Yeah, so let's have these conversations on mental health,
That's
on
important.
anxiety, on, you know, the things that hurt you, the things that bring you stress, the things that bring you down, the things that you feel you have to do. Let's talk about these things so that the next person suffering gets to know that they are not alone. Because for sure you're not, and gets to know that there is help available, because there really is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
On Instagram and on WhatsApp.
Somebody told me at home. I was just hoping you're not going that direction.
Well,
let's continue.
Yes. But I am available on Instagram as B_Njagi.
Okay.
I don't know if it's appropriate to just like leave my number.
Yeah, it's okay. Feel free.
Okay. 0706 700 461. WhatsApp, text, call, whichever.
Give us again your number.
0706 700 461.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you have your own farm, and where do you practice in line with your counseling field?
I currently work under a firm called Wema Psychological Services.
Okay.
Yes, so as an associate counselor. So it's like, you know, a firm, and then there's, you know, different counselors. Yeah, so that's where I see my patients from.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So through that number, we can always make a certain arrangement,
Yeah.
and we can come for therapy sessions.
Yes, online, physical, whatever works for you.
Amazing.
Yes.
Wow, I believe that has been of great blessing. Na before tufunge tunakuanga na one culture here at the Divilge.
Oh gosh.
We have to lead people to Christ.
Okay.
Because that's the
I love
biggest
it.
mandate
Yeah.
that you've been given. We can talk about psychology and all these matters, but at the end of the day, Beulah, if I don't have Christ, if you don't have Christ, It will be one medical issue to another mental issue to another
for
emotional
sure.
issue.
For sure.
I like the song that sings at the center of it all. It seemed that I do what? That I see. It's Jesus that I see, because he is the one that puts me together, my emotions, my mind, my wealth,
sure.
my career, everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, to your case. So can you look at this camera? You are born again evangelist Beulah, and lead now to me change,
Nini Hearts.
hearts. Yes, evangelist. Now kindly lead someone to Christ.
Okay. So if that's you and this is a desire of yours, just let's pray together. You can repeat after me,
Okay.
and then we'll celebrate the new brothers and sisters in faith that we have. Dear Lord Jesus,
Dear Lord Jesus,
we thank you for the gift of salvation.
we thank you for the gift of salvation.
Thank you that you loved me so much,
Thank you that you love me so much,
that you chose to die on the cross for my
that you
sake.
choose to die on the cross for my sin.
Today, Lord Jesus,
Today, Lord Jesus,
I confess that I am a sinner,
I confess that I'm a sinner,
and I come before you in repentance.
and I come before you in repentance.
I ask that you may forgive
I
me
ask that you may forgive me
of all that I have done wrong.
of all that I've done wrong.
And this night,
And this
Lord,
night, Lord,
I choose to accept you
I choose to accept you
as the Lord and Savior of my life.
as Lord and Savior of my life.
Come into my heart, Lord,
Come into my heart, Lord,
and make your home in my heart.
and make your home in my heart.
In Jesus' name I pray.
In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
Amen. Amazing, ladies and gentlemen. If you've given your life to Jesus, talk to us on our social media platforms, that is Nisi Television, and it will be of great blessing. Thank you very much for coming on board.
Thank you for
And I
having
believe
me.
we'll have this conversation next time.
Yeah.
Of course, in having more details and more conversations. And it will be such an honor to us as a family here at Nisi Television. Ladies and gentlemen, wow! Najua hiyo notebook na sasa imejaa. Lakini sisi ni nani? Next week tunaendelea kuandika na tunaendelea kulearn more. See you next time here at Nisi Television, The Divulge Show. My name has been Kesh Susan, with the one and only Dr. Evangelist Therapist Dr. Beulah Njagi. Shalom.